What if the final moment of Jesus on earth was not an ending, but the true beginning of something unstoppable? What if the silence after his departure was actually filled with a power greater than his physical presence? What if the ascension was never about leaving us, but about empowering us to carry everything forward? There is a quiet mystery wrapped in the closing lines of the Gospel of Mark. It doesn't unfold with dramatic speeches or long farewells. Instead, it speaks with a kind of divine simplicity that almost feels easy to overlook. Yet within these few verses lies a shift so profound that it reshapes the entire meaning of faith, presence, and purpose. After speaking to his disciples, Jesus is taken up into heaven and sits at the right hand of God. And then something unexpected happens, not in the sky, but on the earth. The disciples don't stand frozen in awe. They don't retreat into confusion or fear. They go out, they move, they begin. This moment is not about departure, it is about activation. From one perspective, the ascension can feel like a loss. For those who walked beside him, who heard his voice, who witnessed miracles with their own eyes, how could it not feel like something was being taken away? The physical presence of Jesus was real, tangible, comforting, and suddenly that presence was no longer in front of them. But what if this is exactly the point where everything becomes more real, not less? Because while Jesus is lifted up, something else is released downward, into the hearts of those who believe. The story doesn't end with him going up, it continues with them going out. And this movement is not driven by memory, but by transformation. They are no longer followers trying to understand. They become messengers carrying something alive within them. This is where the shift in perspective begins. Before the ascension, the disciples often looked outward for direction. They asked questions. They waited for answers. They depended on Jesus to lead every step. But after he is taken into heaven, something changes in the nature of their faith. It is no longer centered on physical proximity. It becomes rooted in spiritual conviction. They begin to act, not because they see him, but because they trust him. And this trust is not empty. The text tells us that the Lord continues to work with them, confirming the message through signs. This is not a distant God observing from afar. This is a presence that operates in a different dimension, one that moves through action, through faith, through obedience. The ascension, then, is not about separation. It is about expansion. Jesus is no longer limited to one place, one group, one moment. His influence begins to move through many, across distances, beyond boundaries. What was once localized becomes universal. What was once seen becomes carried. And this brings us to a deeper question. What does it mean for us today? It is easy to admire the story from a distance, to see it as a sacred event belonging to another time. But the essence of this moment is not locked in history. It speaks directly into the present, because we too live in a space where we do not see, but are called to believe. We do not hear his voice audibly, but we are invited to respond. We are not standing on a mountain watching him ascend, but we are standing in our own lives, facing moments that require faith without visible proof. The disciples could have chosen to remain still, waiting for another sign, another appearance, another confirmation. But they didn't. They moved forward with what they had already received. And maybe that is where the real challenge lies, not in waiting for more clarity, but in acting on what is already clear. There is something powerful about the idea that Jesus sits at the right hand of God. It symbolizes authority, completion, and divine alignment. His mission on earth reaches its fulfillment, but not its conclusion, because the continuation of that mission is entrusted to those who remain, to ordinary people, imperfect individuals, those who doubted, who failed, who misunderstood, and yet were still chosen. This changes how we see ourselves. We often feel unprepared, unworthy, or uncertain. We wait until we feel ready to step into something meaningful. But the disciples were not perfectly ready either. They stepped forward with faith that grew as they moved. And that is the hidden rhythm of this passage. Movement creates understanding. Action deepens belief. Faith becomes real when it is lived. The ascension invites us to stop looking only at what is missing and start recognizing what has been given. It asks us to see beyond physical presence and discover spiritual reality. It challenges us to move beyond passive belief into active participation. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that we are not alone in this journey. Even as Jesus is taken up, the text emphasizes that he continues to work with them. This is not a story of abandonment. It is a story of partnership, a divine collaboration between heaven and earth. The signs that follow are not just miracles, they are confirmations. They affirm that the message is alive, that the mission is real, that the presence of God is still moving. And in a world that often feels uncertain, distant, or disconnected, this message carries a quiet but powerful assurance. You are not left behind, you are being sent forward. There is a difference. Being left behind implies loss, absence, emptiness. Being sent forward implies purpose, direction, and trust. The disciples were not abandoned, they were entrusted. And in the same way, each of us carries something that is meant to move, to grow, to reach beyond ourselves. The ascension shifts the focus from holding on to stepping out. It invites us to release the need for constant reassurance and embrace the strength of quiet faith. It teaches us that divine presence is not always about what we can see, but about what we are willing to carry. And sometimes, the greatest evidence of faith is not in what we feel, but in what we choose to do. The world the disciples entered after the ascension was not easy. It was filled with resistance, doubt, and challenges. Yet they continued. Not because everything was clear, but because something within them was certain. That certainty did not come from themselves. It came from the one who had risen, who had spoken, who had been taken up, and who was still at work. This is the paradox of the ascension. In leaving, he becomes more present. In being unseen, he becomes more active. In completing his earthly journey, he begins a greater movement through others. And maybe this is the perspective that transforms everything. Instead of asking, why did he leave, we begin to ask, what has been placed in us because he did? Instead of focusing on absence, we begin to recognize activation. Instead of waiting for something external, we begin to respond to something internal. Faith becomes less about searching and more about stepping, less about proof and more about trust, less about holding on and more about moving forward. The disciples went out and preached everywhere, not in one place, not to one group, but everywhere. This word carries weight. It speaks of expansion, of courage, of a message that refuses to stay contained. And behind their movement is a quiet confidence, not in themselves, but in the one who continues to work with them. This is where heaven meets earth, not in a single moment, but in ongoing action, not in a distant realm, but in daily decisions, not in extraordinary events alone, but in ordinary steps taken with faith. The ascension is not just a moment to remember, it is a pattern to follow, a reminder that what begins with him continues through us, a call to live in a way that reflects something greater than what we can see, a quiet invitation to trust that even when we feel alone, we are part of something much bigger. And maybe today, that invitation is still open, not with loud declarations or visible signs, but with a gentle, persistent call within, to move, to trust, to carry, to go. Because the story did not end when he was taken up. In many ways, that is where it truly began. Thank you for watching this video. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, follow the channel, and share this video with someone who might need it today.